Hello all, I'm Andrew Catchpole, editor of Harpers, and welcome to this pink-hued webinar in partnership with leading Languedoc producer Vignobles Foncalieu. Today we have an excellent panel whom I'll ask to introduce themselves in just a moment and who will be discussing diversity in rosé and how Languedoc is well placed to lead the charge. Having pre-tasted a selection of wines to wet our whistle for this session, we're going to look at the diversity of styles within the Languedoc rosé category to see how this compares with Provence and elsewhere. And then we'll examine the place in the market for diverse styles, while also looking at opportunities they may afford to help grow the broader rosé category. Before diving in, it's worth mentioning that Ben Bernheim, one half of Liz Gabet's rosé expert team at Pink Dot Wine, recently reminded me that global rosé consumption has risen by 2% as a share of all wine consumption over the past couple of decades, now hovering above 10% of total consumption. And we've certainly seen a significant rise in rosé consumption in the UK. The question is then, are drinks vendors losing out on potential sales with limited rosé lists and by often only focusing on one style and region? Quick word on our partner today. Foncalieu is an innovative quality cooperative in the Languedoc with a major focus on rosé. This producer alone reported a 7% increase in rosé sales by value in 2022. Some 49% of its production is now pink, with the range drawing on some 14 different grape varieties. The group describes itself as a rosé powerhouse and aims to market 10 million bottles of rosé by 2025. Okay, it's enough from me. Let's meet the panel. Hello all, great to see you. Could I ask you to briefly introduce yourselves and then let's get cracking. And sorry, I forgot to say to the lovely audience out there, thank you for joining us. There's an opportunity to ask questions which we may pick up as we go or at the end. Use the Q&A function. You'll know about this by now. So let's dive into the panel. I've got you all alphabetically in front of me. So Frances, would you like to begin?
Hi there, my name is Frances Bentley. I am the wine buyer at LWC Drinks. We are a composite wholesaler based in the north of England, but we have a nationwide distribution network covering all the way down from Cornwall up to the northeast. We distribute a bit in Scotland as well, but it's mainly based in England and Wales.
Excellent, thanks. Poppy?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Poppy de Courcy Wheeler, and I am the rosé buyer for Waitrose and Partners, a supermarket in the UK.
Excellent, thanks. Luma?
Hello, everyone. My name is Luma, work at Davis Wine Merchants. I am the marketing manager for the trade and fine wines as well, and write about wines and all the other things in wine.
Thank you. And Ant?
Rixon, I'm the managing director at Enotria&Coe. We're a Italian-founded wine specialist that have added wholesale to our arms, and we distribute all around the UK.
Excellent, thank you. And last but very far from least, Nathalie.
Hi everyone, I am Nathalie Estribeau. I am the head winemaker of Foncalieu. I've been around for 6 vintages already, and yeah, I'm proud to join today. Excellent,
well thank you all. I think, Nathalie, let's jump in with you first, if we may. Just a word on why you as producers have invested so much in rosé, and why would you say that Languedoc is well suited to producing diverse styles? Okay, so first of all, Foncalieu started making quite a bit of white wine more than 20 years ago. Also, the south of France is mainly is a big producer of red grape varieties. Foncalieu was really one of the pioneers in making white wines, and these white wines were really successful in the UK market. So with this background as white, we saw rosé potential in terms of quality and style a bit more than, I think, 15 years ago. I mean, the French market has been very big with rosé wines. So we took the turn, but moving from white to rosé, first of all, we have the grape varieties to be able to make that. In total, we've got more than 50 grape varieties planted within our vineyard. Our vineyard is quite large. We've got about 5,000 hectares from Carcassonne up to Béziers. So with a very diverse
a big diversity, sorry, of terroir, from some mountains to some plain, next to the coast. So with different winds, different altitudes. So we cover these wide varieties of terroir with this large base of varietal red grape varieties. So moving from whites, where we had a technique of making white wines with good freshness, it was like easy for us to move into the rosé category, starting with like some of the French typical white rosé, rosé from, for example, Merlot rosé is very successful in France. But then we've been moving little by little to different grape varieties. As you said, today we make more than 14 different varieties as rosé. So we've got the diversity. So it's really the expertise of making white wine as helpers, together with the diversity of terroir. And we're lucky enough to have 320 days of sunshine in the south of France. So I don't want all of you to come over to live there, but we are. It's really the best thing to do to get for rosé, compared to the rest of France, of course.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So in a sense, that diversity of rosé, it just reflects the overall image that I have of Languedoc, in the sense that it just has this phenomenal diversity of wine, full stop. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, anyone on the panel want to go first with kind of overall impressions of the 6 samples, the wines that we tried prior to this session, just to kind of, whet our appetites for discussion, I suppose. Did you find that kind of diversity there? Who'd like to pick it up? Any sort of overall comments?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. I'm happy to. Yeah. I was really excited to. Quite often when you work for one company, you get quite stuck with what you've got, and so it was really, really good to try some different things. I've loved the south of France, in particular the Languedoc region. Obviously, you can tell by my accent I'm not from here, but it's been a part of the world that I've spent a lot of time with. And so some of the stuff I got from Nathalie, for the wines that we tried, there was anything from salinity, which I love and associate with, real coastal stuff, through to, beeswax and all sorts of other things, which sometimes I think that you associate that area with low cost, and I think that what we were sent was a great representation of things at reasonable value that would probably challenge a lot of Provençal wines. I don't know if that would. I don't want to lead on to a market discussion after that, but there are a couple, particularly the wines from that little Corbière region, which we call it the. What's called the IGT Valley de Paradis or something like that. So it's, Nathalie, am I right in thinking that's sort of the traditional Corbière region?
It is in the middle of Corbière, yeah. We've got the Chateau Gléon, and we make 2 of rosé, and this is the IGP, which is a blend of different varieties.
For personal taste, and I tried this with a few of the buyers from work as well. My personal taste was Les Armoires. Was absolutely the sort of thing that I would drink all day long, and all of my buyers liked the one that had a little Pinot Gris, Grenache Gris and Sauvignon Gris, and it's so cool when you're in a room, and even though you're trying to be professional, you're being very subjective about what you do and don't like, and so we really enjoyed particularly those 2 wines. So congratulations, well done on that one. We really enjoyed them. I don't want to take up too much time because you guys have probably got something far more intelligent to say than me as well.
No, I think that was a fantastic summary. Would anyone else? I mean, because the audience haven't actually tried the wines, I guess we shouldn't talk to them too much. But that's great. I think great stuff. Anyone else wanted to add any comments about literally the wines that we went through? Roseanne's pretty much covered it off.
I think it was nice to see a diversity of styles, but a diversity of sort of textures, and there was really something for everybody. And I think that seeing also, you can kind of guess what the price points might look like, and it was good to see good representation all the way through the ladder. I think it's really important to be able to offer something concrete, good value that people can access at all these different price points, and to see sort of that finesse on the premium wine, on the Glayon was really lovely to see, beautiful in a texture. But I think that was the common thread all the way through them. I think there was really interest. There was a great deal of interest in all of them. So yeah, I think it was a really strong showing, and I really enjoyed them. So thank you again for those.
So it's really interesting because we can't avoid the fact that, nor should we, that Provence has sort of, stolen the lead in terms of creating a name and also a style, an expectation of style with consumers. What's my question there really? Is it that Languedoc is capable of producing a much broader style, or is it that Provence has shoehorned itself in, do you think, but I mean quite cleverly, commercially, into one style? How much should Languedoc follow Provence? Should it not? Should it make its mark with its diversity? Who wants to pick up on any thoughts on that? I mean, Poppy, from a supermarket buyer's point of view, a rosé buyer's point of view, what thoughts?
I would say the answer to that is they can and do both of those options. I.e., there's the place in the market to emulate the Provence style, but perhaps they're able to offer at better value, which is becoming more and more important for customers every day. But then in addition to that, there's the scope to offer that huge breadth of flavour and texture, as Frances mentioned, so that those who want to explore more with rosé can do that. But then I guess the challenge is how do you market and inform customers of what's going to be in the bottle when there is a huge spectrum of options available. So yeah, that would be my comment.
Okay, well, pick up on that and I think dive a bit deeper into that in a while. So I think that's one of the nubs of this discussion. Just quickly ask around the panel actually, which I mentioned just now. What trends are actually seeing sales wise in the world of rosés? So I guess both as suppliers, distributors, agents, and as retailers, what are you actually seeing? This is sort of to the UK panelists.
Who's going first? Jeremy, I feel like I'm not trying to take this conversation over, but we've obviously seen with premium rosé, we've seen champagne houses invest in them in the last, particularly the last decade. Some of them were involved before, and so I think that people understand that that there's a high-end premium end to it, and I think that has actually helped. It's affected the colour of rosés. People all around the world are producing. I think that probably I'll get nods right around this whole board if I said, can you remember, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and the range of colours of rosé that you get, rather than now, it's very much Provençal / salmon pink, that sort of thing. And so those are, I think that those are the two sort of biggest changes that I've seen. But our customer base is although they are quite specific in the colour, they are not as specific in where it comes from. So they're experimental in terms of getting it from Australia or New Zealand or South America as well. So I think that it's that brand owner thing, that sort of champagne style support that they'll sometimes give them for investment, but then the rest of the world sort of slightly colour copying.
Yeah, Luma, does that reflect your and the Davies experience?
Yeah, I think so. Like every year we see people jumping from the normal Provence for something more premium. We recently started adding more, roses with barrel aging. I think people are going up and also looking for roses to match with food as well, which before.
Oh, we've lost you briefly there. So we got as far as from where I'm sitting, what I can hear is people becoming interested in rosé matching with food as well, which is taking it slightly more seriously as a wine. So anyone else want to add to sort of trends that we're seeing with rosés in terms of sales, in terms of the styles that people are drinking and so on?
I think it was interesting what you said about rosé now representing 10% of the wine market. I think in the on trade, which we exclusively deal with, we don't do anything in the off trade. We actually see it stronger. We see it pushing to 13. I think that represents to a certain extent the type of outlets that LWC services. We sell a huge amount of rosé at all different price points, But I think it's also showing something in terms of, I think people see rosé as a bit more playful. Certainly the packaging is a bit more fun. It can be really expressive. I think that is certainly clear in the wines that we saw from this session as well. And I think it's allowing people to have a bit more fun with the category. And I think that's really a positive thing in wine. I think people want to enjoy it. And I think that exactly the packaging here and the style of wine, I think that represents what we're seeing in the category really strongly in the on-trade. Yeah,
okay, fantastic. So how much of a straight jacket is the Provençal style still kind of imprinting on the category?
From my perspective, I think there is a little bit of that at play. I think that we are seeing people really want to go for that lighter style. They want to go with the interesting shaped bottle, and the marketing is incredibly important, but really the marketing should be important for everyone. I just think that people feel a little bit more like they can be a bit more expressive with it, perhaps. I think the styles that we're seeing now increasingly from other parts of the world, like Spain, where you would have traditionally seen darker rosés, we are now seeing more and more people going for that blush pink, that salmon colour, as Ant said.
Yeah, is this
what? But I don't think that's a negative in a way. I think that if it's something that introduces people to your style and your category of a rosé, I think it can be a jumping off point to introduce them to other things in your range as well. I don't think it needs to be seen as a negative.
Yeah, so you sort of ease them in with something that's familiar, but perhaps to a different territory. So it may be Navarra or something like this, to use an example, and then you can perhaps steer people towards sort of darker hued and perhaps more structured kind of styles of rosé and so on, which you might be getting from those garnachas across there. Poppy, does this resonate on supermarket shelves? Is it? I mean, I have a Waitrose literally 3 minutes from where I'm sitting, and there's a fabulous wall of rosé there and some very good wines. But it's fairly monochromatic, if you don't mind me saying, which isn't a criticism. I'm just saying, obviously, that's what appeals to your customers. How difficult is it to move people beyond the stereotype that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think probably the color palette of our range has definitely become more aligned to the Provence expectations over the last however many years, and I do think it remains quite important for customers, and for us, certainly Provence is still number one within the range, but there's definitely a move and an interest for customers to experiment, and I think it's all of the amount of work that's gone into talking about rosés, be it through Elizabeth Gabet's books in the press. I think that sort of third-party endorsement is creating a lot more interest and willingness to experiment. So we've now got a couple of oaked rosés in our range, which we didn't have before. So color-wise, yes, perhaps not as diverse, but palette-wise, we are trying to approach all the different styles.
Yeah. Okay. So, is this the experience of anyone else trying to push different styles, and how best to do that? What's the story in France, Nathalie?
Behind the scene, also we've really focusing on the pale color. There is a lot of innovation and experimentation. Oak was mentioned. We do like fermentation in oak barrels now, or age them as well. But there is a lot of bioprotection with acidification with yeast. There are a lot of tries going on to really make keep making different style of rosé, adapting to the climate change as well. There is really a lot of innovation within the winemaking of rosé. We do a lot of stabulation on solids with the juices to get more flavor. So we get more diversity and complexity with all those innovation. On top of the different grape varieties, you had like one of our rosé, Nouveauté, is made of resistant grape variety, so adapted to the climate change as well, but giving like different sorts of flavors and texture as well. Yeah. But yeah, the color, the focus on pale color can be a bit frustrating for winemakers. But we understand the consumer, but we're trying different routes at some point as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because Luma, just before you were cut off by failing technology for a moment, you'd got on to kind of like food pairing. I think you were talking about exploring different ways, if I understood, of getting consumers to engage with different styles of rosés. Was that is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I have a dodgy internet connection. But I think so because, you know, it is, people normally associate rosés with like easy drinking, starting, you know, just for fun, while you are seeing more and more, especially I think with sommeliers, they are very understanding that you can use like a more serious style or different styles, like when you have like more flavors, because Provence is a very light style. When you have a little bit more potency, as we've seen some of these wines that we've tasted, it's definitely a wine you can convince people to drink with food as well. And then you open up more possibilities than just like, you know, for fun or for Instagram, Instagram wise.
Yeah. So, I mean, something you just touched on there, are we generally not taking rosés seriously enough as a category? Is it very much like are they like a sort of after work? No, gin category's moved on so much, not a good example. I was going to say like just a cold, wet lager after a long day, where really flavor doesn't come into it. You just want something wet and fresh. And how much has that shifted, or is that still very much perception?
I think it changed a little bit. I think it's changing even more. I think more people are understanding the category, better it's getting. I think in the past, like if we say 2 years ago was definitely just, first of all, wine for women, okay? And just light styles, just for Instagram, just for fun, you know, just to drink in summer. While now you can see people drinking rosés in winter as well, which I think is super interesting. Because then you change the perception that it's just for one season, just for fun.
And you're nodding. Is there anything you can add to that in terms of, are you, through your sales, are you experiencing less seasonality with rosé? Is it becoming, it is clearly becoming more and more around drink?
100%. I wouldn't say that rosé is making up 10% of people's wine lists quite yet, but in some cases, as you know, since post-lockdown, when wine lists have shrunk, then I think that's more realistic, or sorry, more reasonable. What I was smiling about was just one of the descriptions just reminded me that we've got you know, we're a medium-sized company. There's sort of 150 odd in our head office, and you quite often see trends about what people like, because everyone does like wine, whether they're working in accounts or whether they're on the telephones or whether they're in the marketing department or whether they're in sales. And so you see these different quirks within staff purchasing. And we've definitely seen a lot of support for Sicily with rosé, as in both with customers and with staff. And we've recently just had some incredible success with northern Spain. Someone mentioned Navarra before, so I just, you know, it's the same color profile, but it's a very different style and very different texture, very different viscosity, you know, that sort of thing. And so we're definitely seeing that. And in the last sort of 3 years, particularly, we've brought in quite a lot more from both New Zealand and Australia, and South Africa, excuse me. So again, they're not making up, you know, sort of in any case, they're not really making up more than 10% of what we sell, but it's really spread the mixture. And some of that is just to do with the general interest of staff, because usually, weirdly, what happens is if a few of them get onto something, they tell each other, and then they tell two friends, and that ridiculous advert on the telly after that, which I always think it's quite cool. Whether it actually goes and challenges premium rosé in the on trade, I don't know, but we definitely have seen that, and there's definitely been a lot of interest and experimentation.
So that's quite interesting. Is anyone else seeing premiumization, for want of a better word, of rosé? Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things that I've noticed is that I find that rosé is a really good way of recruiting people from other categories. So look, I don't want to say that rosé is easy. It's not, but some people find it easier to move into rosé from drinking spirits or anything else. And I think that that's where some of the less expensive wines really help. What's interesting about French rosé in particular is that if you look at our average spend price on a bottle of rosé, the highest value wines and the wines that that people are willing to trade up for most, they all come from France at the moment, I think, in the portfolio. And I think that is a huge amount of the Provence, but I don't see why that couldn't be from other regions as well, from Sancerre, from the Languedoc, from the Rhône. I think it's really good to be able to offer something that is at that premium level. But I think that rosé is one of those categories which I think was previously seen as just being, quite an entry point thing. And now with the advent of Provence, people are willing to do that, but see it from other regions as well. I think the category is just really starting.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well with the Provençal wines, because I mean, if you look at the success of, I'm going to have to mention it sooner or later, Whispering Angel, at its sort of near on 20 quid price point. Look at something like Garus up there, more towards £100. Obviously, not going to be so many sales of that, but when you look at what can be sold at a pretty high, I mean, for a consumer on average, a very high price point with ease and success, there's obviously a lot of room for other rosés to move into that ground all the way up to there and beyond. You would think, obviously they don't have that sort of strong brand, but it's simply saying that consumers are prepared to sort of spend that much. I mean, I thought it might be interesting, Poppy, if you're not giving away too many trade secrets, how does the average spend on rosé compare with reds and whites? Is it about the same? Is it higher, lower? This is obviously through Waitrose, but don't worry.
I don't know if I can share, I'm afraid.
Okay, sure. You do
Maybe
it discreet up or down.
I'd rather not, just in case.
Yeah.
Can I guess? Sorry, can I guess?
Yes, Nathalie.
By all means, I'll remain poker faced.
If they are from France, they might be a bit higher in price now. If they are from Provence.
Oh, well, yes, you can see on shelf by all means that, yes, in general, Provence will command a higher price than elsewhere. But as for average AIP, it's yeah, we'll leave it there.
That's great. Oh, that was a very diplomatic way of asking the question, Nathalie, and a very considered answer, which isn't specifically giving anything away, but there we go. So yes, I guess the point is, coming back then to the point about rosés, we've said that consumers are interested in trying other styles. Obviously, perhaps this has to be a little worked, a little sold by the trade itself, getting people interested, pointing out the different stories behind wines, different regions. Obviously, at Enotria&Co, you're having great success, bringing rosés in from a myriad number of places around the world and strengthening the portfolio. Simple question: why aren't we seeing a bigger, stronger, and more diverse rosé section on the list? Is this reticence from, and I'm thinking specifically on trade here, but also to a degree, merchants and multiples? Why aren't we seeing bigger rosé categories? Surely if this is a success area, wouldn't it benefit businesses potentially in the retail and on and off, to diversify the category, to offer more? I'm still going into an awful lot of places, from pubs to good restaurants, where there's such a limited choice, and a very limited choice by the glass.
I agree with you. I think you will see lengthening of lists, because with education and with good marketing spend, people understand that it's not just focused on rosé. They understand you can buy a Malbec for £5 and you can buy a Malbec for 200, 300,000, whatever. So, but what I'm trying to get to is that price range, sort of anywhere retail, I suppose, from about £7 up to 50, is not unusual anymore. And so I think that that's experiential, excuse me, and that's people being willing to, people understanding enough to know that they can get value at all of those price points as well. And so I do think we'll see it stretched. We're always going to try with that because, you know, that's the value of, as a wine specialist, you know, we have a wine list and we do expect to get 80% of our sales from 20% of the products, but you still need to have the rest of it to make it credible as well, and you know, to value our suppliers adequately and things like that.
And France is similar. Is this the LWC experience?
I think sometimes one of the simplest ways is looking at the practicalities of it. Have they got the fridge space to have 20 rosés on the list? They possibly don't, and something would have to suffer. And if that's something like white wine, perhaps they don't feel comfortable in giving up that. But in order to do more rosé by the glass, they would need adequate space. And if they've been set up to do a list in an older style, that could be part of it. I think it's also sometimes a reticence to experiment. We do try to encourage the customers that we have to play around with the list. We have a team of WDMs who support our customers to do that. But I think sometimes they just feel that it's always been the case that you had, you know, 3 on the list. There was a white zin, there was a French one, and maybe there was something from Spain. And that was what people were used to, and they could normally get what they wanted to. I think also until we get people more confident talking about this in the trade, and we actually get the staff to a point where they're happy to sell these wines, as much as we may want to see them on lists, unless they actually have the throughput through a site, it's just dead space. So I think we do need to educate people more, and I think things like this, and I think all the activity that's happening in the trade at the moment is only going to help. It's a positive thing, because I think there is a lack of understanding about rosé in the category in general.
Yeah, Luma, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I agree. I think the next level would be convincing more men to drink it. Because I think I don't know why. It's interesting because still there is a resistance of men drinking rosé. I remember last year we did a promo, it's a rosé special promo we do every summer. And so the name of the promo is Drink Pink. Is our most sold promotion for the year, apart from Christmas, of course, but led exclusively, I would say almost exclusively by women. You just see women ordering for it, you know. So I think, and then it connects again with rosé wines being associated with, like, for fun, just for Instagram and stuff. So I think the next step would be convincing men to drink it, because then you will see more people drinking it and more people accepting the category. So education definitely, and men drinking rosé.
Okay, well, it's nice to hear men being needed for a moment for something useful. But I agree, and it's actually quite interesting looking at the makeup of the panel. That's more by accident than design, I think. I don't know if we can read anything into it, but I think, yeah, that's a really key point. But it is changing, I think. Though there's still an anecdotally. I will drink rosé. I do drink rosé reasonably frequently, but I also do tend to sort of think, oh, barbecue on the beach, let's take rosé. So I'm still slightly I'm it myself in that kind of, there are certain occasions where it sits, and somehow, I don't know, I think a lot of male company men tend to chase after sort of big reds, really, as opposed to any sort of fresh and more elegant, as a massive stereotype. And I'm thinking more broadly, not just within the trade, where people tend to have very diverse sort of consumption habits. Natalie, what do you make?
It's an absolute delight.
Yeah, sorry, far away.
It is a delight when people bring it to you as part of a tasting menu, or if you see it in an unusual place. Like, it's so much fun to see it, and it's really positive. And I really would like to see more rosé being drunk in a broad mix of places. I think it's a really exciting thing for us to be involved in the trade, because of all the reasons that we've talked about now. And I think it's one of the categories that I think sometimes the winemaker seems to be having most fun with as well.
So a couple of questions then to perhaps Natalie and Audrey. from a winemaker perspective and also more of a sort of marketing perspective, what do you make of what you're hearing? What would you suggest perhaps needs to be done to continue to change perception? We've talked a little bit, obviously education is going to be a key part of that, but there are some very specific things that both those selling wine into retail, those retailing onto consumers, etc., can do to help really sort of continue to shift perception.
In terms of winemaking, it's like continue exploring with oak, with barrels, with different blends as well, because it's interesting. The two first favorite wines mentioned, Orléans, are blends only; they are not single varietal. So it's to continue exploring on that, and then Audrey maybe can pick up on the marketing side.
Yes, about marketing and communication, I think we can change the image of rosé, communicating on maybe more on pairings with rosé, or changing the image and to avoid the swimming pool image of rosé, and more focusing on gastronomic things, on pairings with food, on other way to consume rosé, to continue to educate people and to show that rosé can be consumed as a red wine or as a white wine.
Yeah, Poppy, any thoughts? Any additional?
I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's again a dual approach. I don't think you want to lose the swimming pool feeling of rosé. You know, you want to keep that easy drinking, open it, drink, you know, sort of frivolous, convivial style of beverage, because I think that's really important. But we want to add on, in addition, that you can do a whole lot more. And you know, anecdotally, I'm planning a paella night, and you know, trading up and buying really good rosé and only serving rosé. And I'm hoping that more people are going to start thinking of that rather than planning a meal around traditionally premium drinks such as, you know, white Burgundy, smart claret, for example, that it's going to revolve around a smart bottle of rosé. But yeah, so I think it's definitely, you definitely want both bits of the market.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and we wouldn't be having this conversation about white wines, despite the fact that many people will take a very light style of Pinot Grigio just as a refreshing, light, fresh white. It doesn't sort of detract people's minds from the complexity and diversity you can find throughout white wines from across the world at all. So it can sit very happily, I think, alongside. Yeah, exactly. So Nathalie, you wanted to, yeah.
Could vintage rosé help the category to grow in this direction, to give more complexity, more diversity, and a choice for a different choice for the consumers?
I think it's a fantastic question for the panel. Yeah.
Because right now we tend to all the buyers want to buy the latest vintage. What about older vintages?
We ran as part of a new taste-off series that we're doing at Harpers. One of the reasons I mentioned Navarra earlier. We looked at a flight of Provence wines, Provençal rosés, and a flight of Navarran rosés. Point being, not to say one was better than the other, just to contrast styles and stimulate a, you know, rather similar to this, a conversation about that. And that was a point that was made quite forcefully, that rosé does suffer in a way from, once the immediate vintage is gone, coming back to that idea about fresh immediacy. Then, you know, buyers aren't going to look at it because consumers aren't going to look at it. But we tried one or two older wines from both regions, and they were very good. There was something quite different. So I think that would help change perception. I think that could be a really good point. Another suggestion that was made is that really with reds and whites, while we're all taught that color is kind of important because it gives you clues about the wine, you don't really think so much when a sommelier, for example, is offering you a pairing in terms of what the wine so much looks like. It's more about structure and texture and so on with the food, whether it's going to work, some of the component flavors. And in short, the suggestion was, why not put some rosés, and especially some darker rosés, just in with the reds? I mean, why not just sort of slightly do away with the kind of the rosé category in some instances? I mean, does that sound like a ridiculous thing to do? Complete silence, stunned silence from the panel.
No, I don't think so. I think it's about building the bridges and not trying to do anything too much at once. Both Francis and Poppy mentioned that rosé was often very successful competing with other channels, and that's usually in the swimming pool beach area, right? So it's competing with G&T or Beer or RTDs or whatever it's going to be, and that's great. And then from Nathalie's side, it's very much about, come on, we should be talking a little bit more about the winemaking and the potential longevity of something a little bit oak-aged, and what you were talking about. And I think that making sure that rosé keeps catching the summer popularity, and whether it's female or male, it doesn't bother me that much. I was going to say I love drinking rosé at home because my partner Louise and my 2 teenage boys don't like it, so that means I get it all. So you can call it selfish, or you could just call it that's just what my taste is. So but I do think that there's something, because people now understand the price flexibility, therefore the experimentation they can have. And I think that making really good examples, particularly in restaurants or in sort of tasting pairings, that showing how serious rosé can be as a fine wine perhaps category, for argument's sake. I mean, I'll get shot down for that one, I'm sure, saying fine wine, but why not aim for that?
Yeah, that is a good point. It's a comment actually, and do out there, do feel free to ask questions. It'd be great if you do. But Liz saying not a question but a comment. A producer I met in Corsica refused to sell his rosés for 3 years, and says they were great. So I guess we just need more of that, more of things like that to be happening. So okay, just trying to think. Where do we go from there? So we've identified some of the things that could be done and are happening with rosé in terms of the category. I think maybe then we could begin to summarize, and perhaps we could sort of go around and just ask each of you. And I recognize this game could get more difficult as we go around, as more comments are touched upon. So I might just do it in clockwise order as you are on my screen, but perhaps starting with you, Nathalie, if we were look to then summarize some points as to how we can encourage people to, or encourage consumers to take the rosé category more seriously, in inverted commas, and to dive deeper into it, what would be your advice? And perhaps it's advice as well to those retailers in the off and on trade, as to simple steps they can take, or a simple step they can take to help themselves to grow their rosé sales in value and diversity.
Show more diversity in terms of grape variety, but also try and add some different colors. I know the New World countries are also making pale rosé, but keep some different colors would help, I think, to grow the category, not in short term, but in the longer term. That's my view. And keep adding diversity with more oak and diverse vintages as well.
Okay, Francis, do you want to pick up with any comments?
Just going back to the idea of putting rosé in the red, the category, I personally think that we should be celebrating rosé as a category in itself, rather than trying to stick it into red and almost I don't know. I feel like confusing the consumer further is a mistake. I think we need to celebrate what rosé is as a category and diversify it from there, because I think it's a great opportunity for the wine trade to add value and volume to their sales. I think we've seen that in the trade in general. I think it's an exciting category that has a lot to offer, and there really is something for everybody, especially as I say in France. And I think in the Languedoc, that's definitely been represented here. I think as a stepping stone into the Provence, the category as well. Not to say that they have to go there, but I think it's good to see that there's a diversity of grapes here as well, and styles too. I would love to see more people list more rosé. So please, if you're in the on-trade, please consider it with your pairing menus. And I think there's lots of tips and tricks that we can see from the way that the Champenois have used rosé as well. I think the way that they've marketed it and the way that they've sold it, and also the way that they sell it into restaurants to pair with food. I think there's lots of signs and signposts that we can take from there as well.
Okay, fantastic. Audrey, any further comments?
Just be curious to try different kind of rosé from different places with different grape varieties, and find your kind of your type of rosé, because there is one, of course.
Yeah, I feel after this we'll all be on even more of a mission actually to do exactly that. Poppy, sort of summarizing points from you.
I suppose, you know, we're heading the right direction. The fact that we are sitting here and talking about different styles, oaked rosés, rosé with food, the journey has definitely started and we're on the right path. It's just trying to keep the momentum up and do more of it. And like Nathalie suggested, having tasting back vintages. I mean, I'd love to do more of that, because I know I've been told it a lot of times, but I haven't had much opportunity to taste. And I think if you taste more, you would have more confidence then to put such wines on your shelves, on your lists, you know, whatever part of the trade you may be in. And I suppose to keep up the momentum, yeah, getting more wines on restaurant lists, I certainly think is where the journey does start. And more, you know, articles in the press, the traditional print media for, you know, everyday customers to see, and I guess celebrity endorsements, you know, big names talking about these big trends we want to push is definitely a way of speaking to a lot of people in a short space of time.
That's really interesting, because I think obviously there has been celebrity endorsement in the sense that there's been celebrity investment in rosé, and that's been one of the categories where they've gone sort of gone long Hollywood stars and so on, but not so much in diversity. It'd be so exciting if I don't know, I'd just pluck someone off the top of my head, if I don't know, Sam Neill in New Zealand came out with a 5-year aged kind of rosé that he's specially making from some of his Pinot Noir down there or something, you know, that perhaps would have some pulling power. I don't know. Luma, what thoughts are left?
I don't think there is many left. So
we've covered a lot of ground, so it's a bit more difficult for you, I think.
So I think definitely food is an interesting way to go, because of course we are already used to drink rosé by itself. So I think going further and, you know, introducing rosés in food pairings, and I think more restaurants adding it as a suggestion, you know, for dishes. So if you have a dish in the menu, suggest a rosé as well, because I've seen loads of whites being suggested, reds, but it's very rare when you see roses as well. And I think drinking more in other seasons, you know, more serious, more bold roses in winter, in autumn. I know it seems odd to do that, but like, I think we have to start drinking rosé all year long.
Well, no, I think it's a very good point. I mean, it's, you know, turkey, for example, I'm thinking about classic Christmas turkey. I mean, surely the rosé has a place there with that meal with a medley of other flavors around it as well. So, you know, do you have white? Do you have red? Well, this could be the sort of, you know, the category breaking and category blurring kind of in between point in a sense, so that keeping everyone happy. But definitely, yeah, sort of encouraging different styles of rosé through different seasons, as you would with reds. Arguably, you might have a Beaujolais during the spring, you might have a Rhone with your game in the autumn. Yeah, so just to get that sort of mentality with rosés. Ants, you've made some great and coherent comments the whole way through. Is there anything else that
I can't imagine what else I could possibly say, mate. So no, not really. Just there was one thing that I thought that I just sort of wrote down, which was, and it's probably more an education piece than anything else for anyone on the screen, that's for sure. They already know all about it, but I always get furious about how warm red wines are served. And obviously, whenever entertaining or in restaurants, we'll quite often ask for a cool bottle of red wine. And that whichever way you want to link that, same thing, right? Most rosés are made out of red wine, okay? Red grapes, excuse me. Yeah. And you know, what's the link in there? And so a couple of mates that are opening some very seafood-based things are going to do a list which is half white and half rosé and chilled red, right? And then a couple of other mates who are also doing it, just because we quite often talk about this, and they knew that I was going to come and have a chat with you guys. I was asking for help, basically, because you think that you know a little bit about it, but you don't really. Was that if you're simply looking at a wine list, and I agree 100% with Francis that not to confuse people by calling it rosé and chilled reds or something like that. But if you just had a wine list and you divide it in three, you'd have a third white, a third red, and a sixth rosé and a sixth either chillable reds or dark rosés. And that's what we were talking about the other day, just because of the consumer sort of palate profile, which want lighter style, sort of hypersensitive taste profile answering wines, but also people are eating lighter food as well, and so big red wines, although will always have a place, are going to be less and less just based on consumer and the next generation of wine drinkers. So that would be my guess. Okay, only a guess.
Sure. No, fantastic. I like the idea or ideas. There you go. So I guess, Natalie, any final word? I know I've always asked you for summary, but has all been said?
Yeah, I think so. Just come around to taste the different vintages. You're all very welcome.
Well, thank you. And thank you very much. And enjoy tasting what we had a wonderful samples so far. So look forward to diving deeper into the portfolio when I next have an opportunity. That's fantastic. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'm not sure we've completely reshaped the world, but hopefully given food for thought in terms of ways that those of you out there who are watching now and or catch up with the recording can kind of continue to sort of generate excitement with your rosé category and move along sort of consumer engagement and understanding, so which really is the point of this conversation. So I'd like to very, very much thank all of the panel. I feel with a glass in hand we can continue chatting about this and dive ever deeper into the subject, but otherwise thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Nathalie and Foncalieu, for partnering with us on this, and yeah, so look forward to seeing you all very soon.